Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to C4C Apologetics. I am your host, Danny, and I'm going to let you know who this feller is over here to my left, probably your right on the computer screen. We've been talking before, trying to figure out, is his shirt blue, green? We're not going to do this aquamarine sea foam nonsense color palette stuff, are we? I mean,
it just shows my softer side.
Is that what it is? Is that one of the pastel colors?
It is, yeah. This is actually probably the only pastel-colored shirt that I own, and my wife is relieved because all my other shirts are either one of two colors, mostly either blue or brown. So,
blue or brown.
Yeah, I decided to break out a little bit with this pastel.
That's awesome. I like it. You said two colors. I was thinking like gray and black. I was like, oh, those are the neutral ones, but you got blue in there, so that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I like blue. My favorite color.
Those of you that are familiar with any recent videos I've done, I'm wearing a hat. You know, it's kind of funny because I got my Jesus shirt on, but I got my Bigfoot hat on. And the reason being is because, well, I need a haircut. Don't I need a haircut?
We could have done that on the video today. I could have given him a haircut. It would have been, you know what? You need some bonus reel. We need some B-reel of me giving him a haircut.
Don't leave me any comments in the description. Don't leave any comments on that. But I got a little bump up here, and so, you know what? I'm putting my hat on because, I need to talk to my barber. So, barber, if you're watching this, I need a haircut, babe. Yes, I call my barber babe because my barber is my wife. And so, nice. But anyways, you didn't come here to listen to me and my haircut and my hat. What we're going to be talking about today is some of those obscure passages within Scripture, some of the obscure topics within Scripture, and that's probably why you clicked on this video. So I have a good friend, a brother from another mother with me. His name's Matt. I don't want to go ahead and introduce him. I want him to introduce himself. So Matt, I'm glad you're with us today. Can you just tell the people a little bit about who you are, anything you want, what led you into wanting to look into the obscure passages?
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, I'm really honored to be able to be here on the podcast and big fan. And, so my name's Matt Swofford, and I've actually been saved since I was 7 years old, so kind of a long time. But my journey into reading and studying the Bible has kind of been a long one because for years, being a dad and a husband and other things, kind of distracted my personal journey, which should never be the case, but it was in mine. And for a long time, I would be challenged by pastor, or Bible studies, or really even by other Christian men to do more Bible reading. And I just, to be honest, at that point in my life, it just seemed so. It just seemed too much like work. You sit down and, hey, who am I? I don't have this big theology degree. I'm just a regular guy. So if I sit down and read, I'm just going to be reading Bible stories and not understanding all of the context. Yeah. So I avoided doing it just because to be honest, at the time it seemed boring. And but I got challenged by, I know Pastor Ken was one here at Open Door Baptist, and a few other men to, if nothing else, just to start praying that God would give me the desire to want to read. And it really started there. Whenever I would start having I was doing a pretty good job, at least, of being consistent with prayer in the mornings.
Right,
And so I decided to start praying for that. And it's really funny because the more I prayed about that, the more I would get more from you, from the apologetics side, and a lot of my mentors are really a lot of the same guys that are responsible for kind of helping teach you and get you, sharpening your intellect. And so I just started reading. I decided to kind of make myself, during the weekdays, I would sit down on my Bible and at least try to get through a few verses. And as I would pray, and then I would read, and this all started probably about 10 years ago.
Okay.
I would find myself reading, and I would come across something that it would just be a puzzle. There'd be a question mark, and so the obscure. So I am a window and door serviceman by trade. So I'm very familiar with glass and other things.
Right.
And I was thinking about the word obscure.
Yeah.
And in our terminology, Obscure it would be in the window business would be glass that allows light to pass through, but you can't see through it.
Okay.
So it obscures your ability to be able to see through it. It's not clear. So in order to be able to see through something obscure, it needs to be clear. It needs to have clarity.
Yeah.
And that's a really good term when you're looking at Bible verses or something that you come across in the Bible that it may seem out of place or maybe you don't understand. I remember for a long time I would read certain Bible passages and think to myself, God is really kind of mean sometimes.
Wow.
He just, how is it that, a God that cares so much about us can really be so mean? And what I have come to find out, and, some of this we'll talk about later, is that God always has purpose in what he's doing. And sometimes it's really easy for us to make a judgment call when we look at Scripture out of context.
Right, definitely.
And I have found that God always has a reason for what he's doing, and there's always backstory, and then there's always preparation for something to come. And so the more that I did that, the more clarity that I got from not only the Bible as a book. And by the way, you really have to read the Bible knowing that you're reading a supernatural document that was, God has instituted this word. And, I used to kind of chuckle a little bit whenever I was told that until I started to read it and started to see how cohesive that it really is. But anyway, one of the reasons that I got into obscure Bible verses that I think is important to cover is, and I think you had a similar experience, is my children. My children would have questions, or being raised in a Christian home, or they might come home from church or something and have to be honest, some really good questions and some hard questions sometimes. And I hated not having good answers because I want them to love God the way I love God. And the problem is a lot of times kids get really disenfranchised with things that they read or things that they're told or their peers. And I wanted to be armed with the information to be able to take them back to this verse that they're looking at or a principle. Even though my kids mostly went to Christian schools, there were things that came up that were really hard questions to kind of deal with. And but we were able to really get through that, and because the answers that we seek, they really are in the Bible. Sometimes it's just knowing where to sort of dig that out. But that's sort of what got me into it, and then the more I did it, the more I was kind of nerding out with it, and
yes.
You start collecting Bible passages and things like that. That sometimes it may take weeks or months, or sometimes you won't know what something means. To be honest, sometimes you'll never. There's just some things that we just won't know, and we have to accept that. There are some Bible passages, and one of them we'll probably talk about a little later, that you just really can't get a clear understanding of what it means other than there is a principle there. And that's what you have to take. You have to take away the principle. You can't necessarily focus too hard on the event. You have to focus on the principle. And that's kind of a big thing. So anyway, I hope that was a really long introduction. So hopefully I didn't put anybody to sleep.
That may have been the longest introduction we've had.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm just kidding. No, that's fascinating. I can definitely relate with what you're saying as far as the kids and the kids asking the questions. And a lot of times us as parents, we don't have answers to questions because we've never either looked into it, cared about it, or thought about it. And nowadays our kids, millennials are still kids, even though technically I'm a millennial, but you got your Gen Zs and now your Generation Alphas that are coming up that have these questions. And so what we're going to be talking about today are going to be questions that kids in the church, as they're coming up, are going to ask. And so I'm just glad that God put the burden on you and the desire to look into some of the obscure passages. And I like how you sort of defined obscure as far as a window that's allowing light in that you can't see, if you will. When you were saying that, I sort of thought about the illustration of just like that, when you're talking about allowing the light in, but you can't really see. So in order to understand the obscure and see through the obscure, does that mean you have to open the door to be able to see what's behind it?
Sometimes,
and is that sort of like what we're doing here today, is opening the door of God's word? And a lot of times, like you said before, people don't do that because either it's daunting, it's a challenge, they think they need some seminary degree to do it. But do you have any seminary degrees?
No, I don't. And one of the things that I think is important too, and this is just some free man advice, and I'm not
advice.
I'm not one to give a lot of free advice, because most of the time I'm the one looking for it.
You're giving man advice as I'm sipping on my cup, although this is a Man City cup, so
yeah. It is, but it's trying to find someone that you trust who can mentor you. Now, I've been very fortunate that God put 2 or 3 guys in my life that really there were people who I could go to, that when I came across something and would get stumped, I could go to and ask them questions, but also just really for accountability. I mean, hey guys, we really need accountability. Mm-hmm. Just in our daily walk, and also, if there's been times as a husband or as a father that I've needed accountability, and also the other thing too is raising kids and studying the Bible, having someone that you trust who is a good godly person. And the way you know if somebody's godly is it's real easy. You look at their life, look at the fruit that they bear in their families. As far as their, just the things that they do, the way they interact. I mean, you can tell if somebody's really legitimate by looking at the example that they set. And so that's important, because the only reason I'm where I am at is not because of a degree or anything like that. It's because there were men who loved me enough to help teach me. And we're not even talking about guys who were necessarily my blood relation family. Mm-hmm. These are people in my church family that came along and helped me to learn more and gave me some really good tools to be able to mine some of this information, some of these nuggets that we get out of God's word.
Yeah. Amen. Well, I think you already you sort of elaborated on how you got into the obscure realm, if you will. I hate to use the term obscure, but I think it's sort of fitting with what we're going to be talking about. And you defined what obscure passages. Could you, before we actually get into the passages, could you let us know what are some common passages that may seem to be obscure to people or veiled to people? What are some of those?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite ones, and in preparation, I knew some of the stuff we're going to be talking about. I do have a few cheat notes. I'm just going to tell you right now, I do have a few of those.
You're giving away the secrets.
So, anyway, just in preparation, but just to make sure that I'm thorough in a lot of the things that I have.
Yeah.
I actually have a list of a couple of them. Mm-hmm. I know one of the biggest ones this is kind of funny, and I recently came across this, but it would be Genesis 10:25. Okay. And so if you, I'm just going to take my Bible here. I've got let me look
sword drill.
Up. Oh yeah, well, I was always the loser on that.
Oh, you're okay. Yep, I see where you're going with this one.
Yeah, Genesis 10:25. Yep. So Genesis 10:25 is a verse where you get a lot of guys, a lot of creationists, and really well-meaning ones that read this verse, and this is what it says. Genesis chapter 10, verse 25 says, "And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan." And the earth divided, when it says that, I remember the first time reading through Genesis, I got a little bit hung up on that, because I thought, okay, earth divided, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Because you come across things like this where you're reading along and you're following, everything's good to go. Mm-hmm. And then this is a little clump of words that's stuck in there, and you're like, wait, whoa, what is this? The earth divided, Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think early on, I really thought that this was a geological question. So in other words, people, and I've actually read this by a couple of authors who thought this is a reference to the continental divide. Mm-hmm. So in other words, sometime after the flood, and basically where the continental drift, where the continents separated, and a lot of people, still to this day, they really hold that view, and and maybe that's it. I really don't think so, though, based on some of the other scriptures that I found to collaborate my belief. And what I believe this is this is more, we have to read a little bit more about this. And for that, we need to go back to or read a little bit ahead at Genesis 10:31. Genesis 10:31 says, "These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations." So now we're told that the generations that we just read, including Joktan and Peleg, these are the generations of Shem, and it mentions after their tongues. Yeah. So wait a minute. Now, before we get there, we kind of have to back things up a little bit and take a look. So anyway, this is a really good reference for tongues, lands, and nations. So we have a divide. The thing that we have to look at here is now we have a divide because they were separated, and that's what verse 31 is telling us. Okay. So also when you look at the Tower of Babel, which is also mentioned in the very next chapter, chapter 11, we have this divide of the people where God linguistically divides the people into nations. Yes. And basically the short answer to all of this is it was during Peleg's generation when the people were separated, when they were divided. And that's just a little historical nugget the Bible's giving us of, hey, this is a time frame.
So Peleg is the generation in which the Tower of Babel happened?
That's right. Okay. So that's right. Yeah. So that would be, if you're looking at generations, and the thing is while this may not make a lot of sense to us Westerners, this is really good history for our Jewish or our friends from Israel. Yeah. I mean, this just gives us a time frame for when the Tower of Babel would have happened.
So this more looking at an overview of the genealogy, if you will, at the end of chapter 10. And then moving on to chapter 11, it's sort of tying into that last part of chapter 10. Yes. Yep. And that Peleg is one of those that were during this Tower of Babel incident.
Yes, and what's funny is sometimes the way the Bible records history, it's not in the same order that we might be accustomed to. Yeah. So it's almost like just before it actually brings up the story of Babel, it happens to mention, hey, this divide happened during Peleg's during Peleg's day. So and then it goes on further to explain what that divide was,
which is what a lot of people have hangups with Genesis. In Genesis 1 through 31, it's 6 days of creation. Then in Genesis 2, some people believe that is totally different order than Genesis 1, when in reality, Genesis 1 is sequential and Genesis 2 is just focusing on a particular portion of chapter 1. Okay, definitely. What do you have any other thoughts on any other common obscure passages that people are unfamiliar with?
Yeah, so I have one that's quite controversial that I'm about to bring up. So
we get into controversial things at times, don't we, over here?
Yeah, we do. So this one really spun me around a little bit, and so
did you have your finger on your head when you spun around, sort of like do a pirouette?
I didn't, but I felt like that's the way my brain felt, trying to figure this one out. But this is going to be. We were just talking about this the other day. Yeah, this would be Exodus chapter 4, 24 through 26.
Sword drill. Yep. Exodus 4.
Yeah. So this is the account where God seeks to kill him. Yeah. So the oh yeah, man, this is and I actually looked into this, and it's funny because some Bible scholars, they kind of steer clear of this, and they'll point to the general principle and they don't try to break it down. I like to live on the edge a little bit, so I'm gonna give you a couple of thoughts on this. But at the same time, I'm also going to approach this from, and I'm going to begin by saying, there is no true clear answer here. This is truly one of the cases where we have to apply the principle and not not try to be too dogmatic about
it,
you know, where we're going. But I think I make a pretty strong case
let's hear
for
it.
this. So the context of this verse, and I'm going to go ahead and read it. And this is Exodus 4:24, and it says, "And it came to pass by the way, in the end, that the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet and said, Surely a bloody husband art thou to me. So he let him go, and then she said, A bloody husband thou art because of the circumcision."
So who is the him?
So that's question number one that we have to answer, is who the him is, because just before this is what we get is God explaining to Moses what he's about to commission him to do.
The burning bush incident.
Yeah, it was the burning bush. He goes through and gives him, and God's very detailed in how he wants Moses to approach Pharaoh and the messaging. And so I think at face value, most people say, okay, this is Moses. This him is Moses. And, Moses is, God's going to kill Moses because he didn't circumcise his son and all that. I don't think that's a good explanation of what this means, and I'm about to explain why. That does seem to be the easy thing to say, because we're just talking about Moses, a little bit before that, and but I really don't think Moses is whose life is in danger here.
Okay,
and I'll elaborate on that in just a minute. So when you go to Exodus 22 and 23, which are the two verses just before these, it says, "And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say unto thee, Let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, and even thy firstborn." So just before this is mentioned, just before this is brought up, here we have some key things we need to look at. It says, Israel is my firstborn. Let my son go. If you refuse, I will slay thy firstborn. So those are the things. That's the things that you need to pull out of that.
Right.
And then we roll into 24, and it says, it came to pass by the way, and here's Moses and Zipporah at an inn in Egypt, and Moses is about to approach Pharaoh with this very clear message, and I believe so. A lot of times the Bible will set up what it's telling you, and if you can't really glean what's coming out of the verses themselves, a lot of times if you back it up a little bit, it'll give you a little bit more context. So here we have Moses, who is about to be the mouthpiece of God himself, Jehovah God, and one of the things that you will learn if you study the Bible very long is God takes extremely seriously those who represent him in public.
Okay.
So if you stand before people in a church, if you stand before people at a podium, at a courthouse, at a political gathering, and you claim to know what God wants, and you're saying these things, he takes it extremely personally. And one of the things that I think that Moses learned through all of this is preparation. Basically Moses neglected to get his house in order before he was about to go stand before Pharaoh. And what I believe was happening here is Moses clearly was very apprehensive about the whole thing to begin with.
Right,
he really was. And of course, and the reason why I really don't think it was Moses is because we read earlier on in chapter 4, Moses God got pretty mad at Moses, and it says, it says that the Lord was angry, but the Lord didn't kill him.
Right.
He didn't threaten him. So I don't understand if it was Moses, why would he suddenly decide to do that now? What I think this is Moses not having his affairs in order, i.e., being having the circumcision done, particularly for his firstborn son, and because with the covenant, with God's covenants, most of the time, particularly in the Old Testament, there was always blood. And honestly, even today, if you think about it, that covenant still stands, but it's through the blood of Christ that we have that covenant with God. But here, Moses had not, he had not prepared in every way that he needed to. Mm-hmm. Therefore, God was going to allow him to experience what he was about to send him to do to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
And so Zipporah, being a good wife, mm-hmm. I could see, sometimes Michelle has to correct me. And
no.
Oh, yeah. She got this business done. Zipporah got it done. And it probably wasn't pretty, right. But she was about to lose her firstborn son. And so she made it happen. And then she was pretty upset with Moses for not making sure this was done before.
Yeah, and then she cast it at his feet.
Yeah, she cast it at his feet.
You should have had this done.
Yeah, you should have had this done. You should have done this. It was your job.
So she stepped up and did what Moses should have had done.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's the context. Now, again, there's not a lot we can pull from that. We only have this, but to me, it makes the most sense in this particular situation. And so I really believe that Gershom was, Moses' firstborn son, was the one who was about to lose their life, not Moses himself. Yeah. And as a side note, by this time, Gershom would have been a grown man.
Ow!
So Moses was not a young. Moses was about 80 years old whenever this happened. So Gershom was not a small boy.
Sort of like Abraham when God instituted the circumcision with Abraham, and Abraham's like, what? And then all the other men there too. So I'm glad I was just a wee little boy when it happened. I could only imagine.
Well, think of Levi and Simeon when they went to defend the honor of their sister. And they they talked to I forget the name of the men from the city, but anyway, told them that if they wanted to join, and be able to marry into the family of Israel, that they had to be circumcised. And anyway, I don't want to get too graphic with that, but basically they waited 3 days when they were the most sore, and they went in and basically destroyed the men. I mean, the men were they made it a strategy of battle. So there's a lot to be said.
I could only imagine at that point.
That's it's a little comical, when you think about it, but it's pretty slick. I'll give them that. It really was pretty slick. So,
I want to get into some specific passage. Well, we've already gotten to some specific passages, but I want to get into some that are frequently asked by a lot of people that watch these videos and just within Scripture and church themselves. And the first one's over in Genesis chapter 6. Okay. Yeah. Sword drill.
Sword drill.
Good thing Holly's not here. She'd be both of us.
She would be dominating. And I'm slow anyway. Man, I really am.
It's funny whenever you watch people on their digital, iPads, phones, whatever, and they're like, okay, we're turned to this passage, and they hit it, and they have to wait, and they have to wait, and they hit it, and then they have to wait, they have to wait. I'm just not a digital guy, I'm not a digital guy.
Definitely analog.
Yeah, exactly. So Genesis 6, 1 through 4, I'll read the passages, and basically what I want to ask is, could you clarify what are the various views of this passage, and which do you believe is most accurate and why? So Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and it says, "It came to pass when the men of earth began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and that they took them for wives, all of which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown." What are the various views as far as this passage? Specifically, obviously, we're looking at these giants, and what do you think is most biblical?
I'm only really familiar, honestly, with two prevailing views. One which I take, the other which I disagree with.
So what do you disagree with?
Yeah, so what I disagree with is I have heard the argument that sons of God would be the sons of Seth.
Okay.
And the daughters of men would be the daughters of Cain, and that the daughters of Seth, the sons of Seth were considered to be pure, and the daughters of Cain were considered to be sinful. And they were because Cain was cursed. The sons of Seth intermarried with the daughters of Cain, and then it just created this atrocity or an abomination, if you will, of race of people, and most of the people that take that stance are people who really have a hard time wrapping their mind around just how supernatural this book really is, and how involved the spiritual aspect of the Bible really falls into place here.
So that first view is more looking at godly people and ungodly people intermingling.
Yes, intermingling with with someone who is cursed. So
with someone who's
Cain,
cursed,
because he was the first murderer,
right?
And there's honestly, there's not a lot to substantiate a lot of that, particularly it doesn't make as much sense as what I believe to be the truth is with a lot of this. So my view on this is, well, first of all, whenever I was looking this through, actually I learned this from guys like you. Go back and look at what some of these words actually mean. So let's get some clarification. Yeah. So whenever you're looking at sons of God here, so sons of God is actually interpreted as, in fact, the Hebrew pronunciation is Ben Elohim, which most often means male offspring of Elohim.
Okay.
And so we know male offspring of Elohim. So now, what does Elohim mean? Well, Elohim is a Hebrew word that is most often interpreted as the word God, or and sometimes it's also used as the word angel. Okay. And so, with bearing that in mind, so now what we know for sure is this could be sons of, offspring of God or offspring of angel.
Okay, right.
So either way, what we're looking at here, you could use either one of those, but we're talking about something or a being from God's realm, not necessarily God himself, although, it could be, but this is more the idea is God's realm.
Right. Okay.
So then we have the, basically the contrast that's being drawn here is we have God's realm, sons of Elohim, and then we have earth dwellers. Okay. So you have daughters of men. So we have, with the daughters of men, so now we have heavenly realm, earth dwellers, and I don't want to get too deep into the whole realm stuff, but basically you have one of the things that we know is the wars that we face every day, even today. There's a spiritual aspect to it, and then there's a physical. Yeah. So we do have these two we do have these two facets of our faith. Right. And it's almost like a combo or a clash of what that is. So now I want to stop right there and back things up. And the other thing that has to come into play here is the declaration of war from God on Satan. Okay. And we can get that whenever we go to Genesis. Let's see. It's basically where he puts enmity between he and the woman.
So you're looking at Genesis 3.
Yeah, so Genesis 3. Yeah, so it's Genesis 3:15. It says, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So this is God's declaration of war on Satan, so after the fall. And what this means is this is a blood thing. Okay. So now we're talking about this goes back. It's funny how everything comes back to the blood. It honestly it does. It comes full circle to the blood. Yeah. So you have this war. Well, the Messiah is going to come through the woman, and when you think about this on the spiritual battlefront, Satan is an extremely intelligent being. In the Bible, there's a lot to be said about that, and we might probably get into that a little bit later too. But what better way to thwart God's plan of the seed of the woman than to corrupt that seed with evil, or corrupt that seed with something other than pure blood,
So looking at the aspect that the Messiah was going to come through the lineage of the woman. Yes. So he's looking at, hey, if I can corrupt the bloodline, I can corrupt the Messiah.
That's correct. Okay. Yeah. So he was, and the thing is if you think about it from a strategy of war, it's not a bad play. Right. It's actually a very smart thing. And so But the result of this consequential, whether planned or unplanned, was we have what it ended up happening is it created supersized humans.
Okay. Is that the giants that we're looking
and that's
at in
the
verse
giants,
4?
yeah. So when we go down and we look, a lot of people say, "Oh, the giants in the land. Where did that come from?" And it clearly tells us, whenever we get down to, we get down to verse 4 there, where it says, "And there were giants in the earth in those days," and so anyway, that's where the giants come from, and it's said again. A lot of this is going to be conjecture and all that, but it is believed that a lot of the Greek mythology,
right,
and a lot of their heroes and gods were actually people,
right,
or they some of them actually existed, at least in some form, not necessarily as recorded, but but they are all rooted in some truth based on giants or Nephilim, which is what that would be what that word actually means. Which, by the way, what that means is so that's the root word for Nephal, which actually means fallen, and then in the Septuagint and Greek it translates as gigantes or giants.
Okay, yep.
So that's where that comes from. So anyway, some really big people came from there, and I believe it's just this is a consequence or basically a result of the war in the early stages between God and Satan, or Satan trying to stop his imminent demise.
Yeah. So would there be any supernatural aspect to these Nephilim in verse 4, or are they just like giant human beings?
Well,
what are your thoughts?
I really don't think there were, other than just being really strong and really big. I don't know that there's a lot that the Bible has to say about them. In fact, there's not a lot of places. It mentions it only a couple of more times, and we'll see the name Anak come up.
Okay, right.
Anak is probably one of the most. That would be the great grandfather of Goliath, who we may talk about a little later. But yeah, so there's a lot of mention of Anak, and he was basically the godfather of a lot of these Nephilim or giants.
So would that be the cause of the flood?
So yeah, I believe that the purpose of the flood was to. Well, so there was two main reasons for the flood. Okay. And again, this is my take on it, and so you don't have to agree with it. But the first one would be, I do believe this was one of God's way to correct this abomination that Satan created through the tainting of the blood of the woman. Okay. And the woman being Israel, or man, so the anyway, which a lot of that would come later. Right. But the other is, during this corruption, one of the things that the Bible's pretty clear about is mankind was evil in every thought and deed that they were doing, with one exception. We have our man Noah. Yeah. And it was through Noah, because of his relationship with God and his choices, that mankind was saved. And God used him as the vessel, no pun intended, as to be able to keep humans alive and well. Right. But yeah, so that to me would be the main cause of the flood. It did have a purpose. And remember, the core of the reason for that was it was sin, but also Satan, trying to corrupt the bloodline. So, God was forced into doing this. It's not like God says, "Well, I'm just tired of all of this," and He wants a flood. Right. And this is another case where sometimes God gets a bad rap for things. Yeah.
So in 2 Peter chapter number 2, verse number 4, "For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment." So here in Peter's letter, his second letter, he's talking about there is a specific group of angels that have sinned that are currently in chains reserved unto judgment. And that we get this idea when we're looking at the word hell in the Greek in verse number 4. It's not Sheol, it's not Hades, it's not any of these common ones. It's the only time this Greek word is used, and it's tartaros is how I pronounce it, sort of like tater tots or tartar sauce, but it's tartaros. And basically, this is what I would argue is a holding cell for a specific group of demons that are actually associated with Noah's days. And so that's another aspect that, I would definitely agree with you as far as the Nephilim and these angels, if you will, that came down with angels, the daughters of men.
Yeah, wow.
And so, but definitely. So looking at that, I want to talk a little bit about this guy by the name of Nimrod. Now, if I say Nimrod, what do you think of? Do you think of like someone that's like a Nimrod? What does that even mean today?
A dork.
A dork? Someone that's dull?
Yeah, no, I don't know. It sounds like an insult, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Call somebody a Nimrod.
Well, apparently there was some guy in the Bible named Nimrod that was a pretty powerful guy. And so I'd like to look at that. I think he's found in Genesis chapter 10.
That would be
verses number 8 and 9.
That's right.
And we only get 2 verses about this guy. And so, as one that likes to study the obscure, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So Nimrod, so Nimrod is a descendant of Shem. In fact, it is, so this is Shem's grandson. So we're talking about Shem, who's the son of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Right.
Nimrod was a son of Shem. So Nimrod, we're told that we know that he was a hunter. And it says, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. So this isn't alluding to his strength. This is alluding to his leadership status. Okay. Not so whenever
like
he becomes mighty, his authority. And in fact, whenever you read down. It said, besides being a hunter, it says in the beginning, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and I'm probably not pronouncing these correctly. So
I'm not Jewish. I don't know how to speak Hebrew.
In Cana.
I called it tartar sauce.
Yes, it's almost like Canaan, but anyway,
in
the land of Shinar. So we know that he was at least a king of. It names 4 areas or four territories, in the land of Shinar, and so he is credited with that's a lot if you think about it. So this is in the early days, and that had not been done before. One other thing too is that remember if we back this up just a few verses, God told Noah basically to be fruitful and multiply the earth. So the idea here was to spread out and multiply on the earth. Basically let mankind build back up. He wanted things to be restored.
Right.
And that was Noah and his sons what they were told to do. And this is something. And one of the things that's important is. Going back a long time, most of the time these kinds of covenants or directives were passed down through the generations, and so it's most likely Nimrod had been told this principle or been given this principle, I guess, by his forefathers, but they clearly were not doing what God wanted them to do.
Okay, right.
And then because we know that he was the king of Babel, we also have. Or Babel. I keep saying Babel. Whatever it is.
No, I called it tartar sauce again.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. Hey, as long as everybody gets the context, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
But it's we see this incident that happens with this tower, and this kind of goes back to that earlier verses. When we were talking about Peleg and all this with the Tower of Babel, that. He was responsible for leading this land that was building this tower. And, one of the things, it's sort of conjecture, but there's a few good scholars out there that really believe that the point of there's all kinds of things. I remember as a little kid without any real study, a Bible teacher I had says, oh, they were just trying to worship God. They were getting ahead of themselves and God really didn't want this going on. No, that's not at all what was happening.
Right.
In fact, it got God's attention so much that he personally came down and walked among them or came down to check it out to see what was going on.
Yeah.
And, we can see by what he says. And it says in verse 6 of chapter 11 it says, and the Lord said, "Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do." Something I want to point out right here. This is after God observes. So many people say, "Oh man, humans are so smart now. They can build towers, and now they're just going to get." They're going to get super smart and they're going to be able to build all these things. And, we have to separate them because they're going to get too smart for us. And that's not at all what God is saying here. What God is saying is, whenever it says nothing will be restrained, God is saying that sin will abound and they will not restrain themselves, that they will do whatever basically pops into their mind.
Would that be because it was a prideful event? Because that they were doing it?
Yeah, that they were doing.
Pride takes root?
That's right. I think so. Also, pride, to me, so this is a big task. So I don't think they would have just built this tower out of pride. I really think they were worshiping something.
Okay, yeah.
I really think there was something else going on here. Now, the Bible doesn't really give us what that was, but some people believe it was... that they were they were worshiping astrology, with the stars.
Right.
And in fact, there's a little bit of some information out there. You can do some reading. You'll just have to Google it, but that it's possible that they were worshiping stars. The other thing too is because there are some allusions of this. It says, "Reach up to heaven and let us make a name, lest we scatter abroad the face of the whole earth."
Right.
But anyway, when you think about worshiping stars, fallen angels are called stars.
That is true.
So there's a lot of connections there. Yeah. So I don't want to get too deep into that because the Bible really doesn't tell us, but it would make sense.
Yeah.
Of that, and also it's funny that they specifically say, "Lest we be scattered abroad upon the earth." So this flies in the face
against
of what God had told them to do. So this is a direct rebellion. So think about Nimrod this way. Nimrod led the very first rebellion against God. And he did it, through the avenue of this tower and through whether it was his idea or whether he allowed the promotion of this idea, it flew in the face of what God had instructed them to do.
Yeah, right. He says, lest we be scattered. Like you said, God had told Noah and the descendants to go fill the earth. And they're like, no, let us do this so that we're not scattered. I don't care what God says.
Yeah, it's just flies in his face. There's also it's funny because I actually heard this mentioned once. Now, there's very little to be connected here, but it's interesting. Some people believe that the Antichrist will be a version of Nimrod.
A version of Nimrod.
Yeah, will be almost like a reanimated Nimrod or something like that. So basically, how we're going to be seeing some throwbacks to the Old Testament.
That would make a good sermon title. Throwbacks.
So some throwbacks.
Throwbacks in the end.
So, and we know that Satan has the ability to raise the dead. Now, is it the same way God does it? No. Is it as powerful as when God does it? No, it's not. But we know, in fact, going back to Exodus, I mean, he had. He was Satan's power to the magicians was powerful enough to duplicate a lot of what God did to a point.
That's true. Yeah.
And then God just kind of shut it down.
Yeah.
And they were no longer able to do these things. So we do know that there is Satan has a lot of supernatural abilities. So I don't know. Could be. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe there's somebody with Nimrod's DNA out there. I don't know. But anyway, that's a bunch of just conjecture. Like I said, it's just one of those things that's just kind of cool to talk about, but there's nothing to say. But.
What would you do if you did one of those DNA tests and it came back and it has been proven that you are a child of what would you do? Nimrod is your grandfather.
Yeah, I'd be kind of worried and also puzzled because I don't like that guy. I'm on the other team. Come on.
Good old Maury Povich.
Put me in, coach. I'm on the other team.
I'm
ready to go.
I get that. Now, one of the things that I've mistaken the flood for as a whole is thinking that the flood's main purpose, or really only purpose, was to get rid of all the Nephilim and the giants. But that always led to a question I've always had, and it's found in Numbers 13:33. Because a lot of people that hold the fallen angel view like I do, they'll be like, yeah, so the Nephilim, corrupt seed of Messiah, so the flood came to go ahead and wipe it all out. But then we get to Numbers 13:33, and then we get the report of, I believe it's the 12 spies that go in to spy out the land. And in verse 33, and there we saw giants, the sons of Anak, which come out of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So my question really is, if the flood was only for getting rid of the descendants, the offspring, the mighty men of renown, why is it after the flood, years after the flood, that we still see the Nephilim alive in the land of Canaan? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So actually, now again, some of this stuff is going to be conjecture because it's really, there are some things that the Bible's not going to give you a what I call petri dish evidence. But so one of the things to note here, by the way, Anak, is that a cool name? It reminds me of something from Star Wars.
I don't know anything about
Sons of Anak.
Is Star Wars the guy that does that?
No. That's Star Trek.
See,
man,
all my haters.
What do we do? It's all right.
Star Wars.
It's okay. We forgive you, brother.
Star Wars is that Hans guy in Luke and
I'm
someone's
thinking
father.
Of Anakin Skywalker. But anyway, I thought that was just kind of funny. So I'm getting kind of goofy here.
I just lost about 5 subscribers there.
But so one of the things that's interesting is I did ponder about this, and I have some thoughts on it. One is that we have to remember angels are both physical and spiritual. So angels, in fact, Ben Lane and I were talking about this in the office the other day.
Yeah.
And so when we consider that, it's possible that some of these angels, the original the ones who started the original corruption, maybe, I don't know if they could change form. I'm not really sure, other than we do know that the program got rebooted after the flood.
Okay.
At the end of the day, the program got rebooted. One thing though that God made sure of is David got the pleasure of eliminating the last of the last of the Nephilim, and that would have been Goliath and his four brothers. And because David himself killed a couple, and then his mighty men. If you read through, it might be 2 Samuel, probably 1 Samuel. Anyway, we see that they eventually they completely wipe out Goliath's family,
right? Yeah,
systemically or systematically over time. So it doesn't all happen like when David's a boy. Because some of Goliath's brothers weren't killed until later.
Yeah.
And but David had the pleasure of killing off the last, at least the last that the Bible mentions.
Yeah,
that's all we know of. And then really after that, you really don't see them brought up again after that. So it was a failed program that Satan had. It was smart in the beginning, it was, but again, this is what you're going to find as you read through the Bible. God is honestly, he's probably 10 steps ahead of Satan at the very least. Satan doesn't do anything that surprises God. And God has safeguards in place after safeguard after safeguard. And God is the greatest of all strategists. And, his wisdom cannot be outdone. And, but Satan has, you almost have to give him a couple of points for trying. And
Yeah.
From man's perspective, it's really not a bad strategy, but it wasn't good enough. I mean, it didn't last. And like I say, and then we have a great warrior like David, and he was able to take care of
Finish
it.
him off,
Yeah, finish him off.
That's why one of the Hebrew names of God that I really like is Jehovah Savah, which is the Hebrew name for the Lord of hosts, or the Lord of the army, Lord of the angelic army, because you get this idea that he is this military general, strategist, and like you're pointing out here. So, no, I appreciate that. So let's jump over to Book of Daniel. So jump over to the Book of Daniel. Now, we've studied this together as a church a little while back. Yep. So, yeah, every now and then I just start breaking out in song. But we've studied this book out a little while back. And then we got to chapter number 10. And in chapter number 10, we get this account that Daniel is praying. And he's praying for an answer to a prayer, obviously. But in verse 13 of chapter 10 of Daniel, it says, "But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days." Now this is Gabriel speaking. He says, "But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia." And it's interesting because it says first the kingdom of Persia, the prince, and then it says the kings of Persia. Now, if this is angel Gabriel, and Michael the archangel had to come, this doesn't appear to be a human ruler in Persia that is withstanding one of God's angels. So as far as this is concerned, is this some sort of demon, fallen angel, some sort of devil that was in control of a region? Are there demons or angels in charge of different territories? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I believe that there are there are demons in charge of territories and things. So to be clear, this is a good way to look at it. Satan learned from the master, literally the master, how to organize a good army.
Yeah.
How to so Satan is not like God. God is God is what's the word I'm looking for? He's everywhere at one time.
Omnipresent.
Omnipresent. Yeah, well, Satan is not omnipresent. Satan has locality. He has to be here or there.
Right.
However, his ability to delegate is second to none. He has a very good authority structure. God has a great authority structure, and Satan learned this from him. So because he is not omnipresent, I truly believe that he has the most powerful of kingdoms divided up, and he has generals in charge. In fact, when you get into Revelation and everything, you can see that there are different powers and there's just a lot there that we see, and I believe that this is one of those cases where it can almost be physical, and so that kind of brings up something, because we were talking about Moses earlier, and, and one question that has come up a while back is, what's this deal with Moses, the body of Moses, and Michael disputing
with Satan.
Something I want to clarify here that I truly believe. When it comes to the hierarchy or the authority structure of angels, I believe that they are ranked, and I think the Bible sort of alludes to that.
All right.
And some people say, "Oh, Satan, he just really, Michael, he was just too powerful for Michael and all that." I'm going to tell you something. I don't think that's the case. I think Michael 100% could have taken on Satan and ended this. However, even preceding any of this fall from Lucifer, there was an authority structure, and I truly believe that Michael, honoring God's authority structure, knowing that Lucifer at one time was his superior, from the standpoint of just like a military rank, that he opted to defer to God. And when you see that, he deferred to God.
Yeah.
It wasn't because he was afraid. It wasn't because he was weak. He was honoring God's authority structure. And so whenever Satan began to push back, he stopped. He did what any good soldier would do. He went to the brass and he was like, "Hey, we have a problem.
Yeah.
I need you to go. How do you want to handle this? Do you want to handle it yourself?" And God took care of it.
Right.
And so anyway, that's something that came up. And of course, then you have to ask yourself the even bigger question: why would they debate over the body of Moses?
Right. Yeah.
I have some conjecture about that too. I don't know if you want to hear that.
So what's your conjecture? I have my thoughts.
Yeah. I believe that some people believe that it will be Enoch and Elisha as the two witnesses.
I held that view until I interviewed Dr. Indy Woods, and he brought up some interesting insight that I've never thought of, and I had since apologized for holding that view. Oh, really? So I once held Enoch and Elijah, but now I don't hold that Enoch position.
Yeah, and neither do I. And a lot of people are not necessarily too far off believing that just because, Enoch walked with God and then he was not.
Right.
Because God took him. So people say, oh, well, Enoch did not die, therefore, he's got to see death. And we don't really know what's going to happen, but what we do know is when you look at Moses and the comparison to, there's really a lot of things that kind of point to Moses, from Moses being present at the Mount of Transfiguration with Elisha. Moses, something interesting. Here's a little nugget I'm going to throw out there to you. So if you read, oh man, I need to look it up now. I think it's in Matthew, but there's one of the accounts.
Let's see, what is it?
Where Jesus steps off and speaks secretly to Moses and Elisha about his coming death. And it doesn't say what he says, but he just speaks. He steps away and
to
speaks
Moses and Elijah.
Yes, to Moses and the Mount of Transfiguration.
Okay,
yeah.
Let me find that passage
here in Luke 9. If you look at Luke 9, verse 31, but I'm going to back it up a little bit and hit this, and it says. Let's go back to verse 28 of Luke 9. It says, "And it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings, he took Peter and John and James and went up unto the mountain to pray. And as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was altered, and his raiment was white and glistering. And behold, there talked with him two men, which were Moses and Elias, who appeared in glory and spake of his decease, which he should accomplish at Jerusalem." So what the Bible's telling us here is Jesus steps aside and is talking to Moses and Elias here about his death.
Yeah, I've never picked up on that aspect right there.
Yeah, and so it's wild, because what we have to remember is there is a big plan here, and Jesus Christ has orchestrated every single part of this. In fact, if you want a fun study, go through the Gospels, the four Gospels, and watch how Jesus reacted to every single encounter. What you'll find is it's crystal clear that Jesus controlled every aspect of his. Whenever it came to his teaching, when it came to his encounters with attacks from, the Pharisees, whether stoning, and especially his arrest, he orchestrated every single thing. If you look, he was always in control. And it's crazy, but and you know why? Because this is all part of a plan. Just like this. This is something that had to happen, and I believe one of the reasons that I really believe that Moses and Elias or Elijah will show up at the end is because they've been part of this far before you and I, from the beginning. And so I think it is Moses. I don't think it's Enoch. Going back, kind of bringing this back full circle. That will be there. Now, I could be wrong, but there is a lot more pointing to Moses. Oh, and by the way, if you read and you look at what their powers will be, calling down fire from heaven, and what's the other thing that?
Well, I know their main ministry is reaching Jewish people
and reaching Jewish people. Yeah,
and so and that was one thing when interviewing Dr. Woods.
Oh, water into blood. That's what it is.
Interviewing Dr. Woods is the fact that if their main purpose is to reach the Jewish people weren't around in the days of Enoch.
No, that's true.
Now, he may be somewhat of a central figure within Judaism. I'm not positive, but he's certainly not up there to the level of Abraham, from what I understand.
Right.
And so when you're looking at who are the two witnesses that's going to reach the Jewish people that the Jewish people are going to resonate with, I don't think it's going to be Enoch anymore. It's going to be Elijah, obviously, and then we're going to have Moses, because Moses was powerfully used for the Jewish people. And it's interesting when we read in the Old Testament, there's two main periods of history that the Old Testament really revolves around. Most of the Old Testament revolves around the Exodus and the Babylonian captivity. And when I look at that, I just think that's a big reason why I believe it's Moses as well, because he's a central figure in the Old Testament history during that time also.
Well, one other thing that I'll add to that, to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, is positionally, where was Israel whenever Moses was sent in to rescue them? I mean, in terms with God, they really weren't where they should have been. No. They were away from God.
Right.
So Moses was sent in. So Moses would be the perfect guy to send back at the end from Israel that's away from God.
Right.
To try to turn them around. He's got a little bit of experience at doing that, at dealing with it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so anyway, that's one of the reasons why. But
I could definitely see that too, because now that you mentioned that, so you see Moses going into Egypt, freeing the people out of Egypt, and then they're stuck at the Red Sea, and they look, the Egyptians are following them. Same thing with these two witnesses that are going to be used to reach these Jewish people, the Jewish remnant. At that time, they're going to have to flee to the mountains. When I think of the word flee, I think of the fact that they're running, if you will, for their lives. And so that would be another similarity between Moses and Exodus and this Moses during that time, because they're fleeing from that persecution too, up to the mountains. And so I just thought that was fascinating as well.
Well, and I got it. This is funny. This is some Marvel Universe like stuff that I'm about to tell you. This is free.
Someone told me I look like Thanos with my beard. Do you see Thanos with my beard?
I don't.
Hopefully not, because Thanos does not have a good chin.
No.
That's all I'm going to say about that.
Prune chin. All right. But I thought this was cool. Back when I was doing some of my study, I was reading about things about Moses, and something that I never caught. You probably, I'm going to read this, and most of you guys are going to go, yeah, duh. But but reading back through chapter 4 of Exodus, I didn't realize that God gave Moses his staff, his stick. Like it's a super stick. It's a magical stick. But no, it says, but God, he hands it to Moses. He says, and thou shalt take this rod in thine hand, wherewith thou shalt do signs. God gave him that thing. See, in my mind, I always thought, well, Moses, he was a shepherd or whatever. He had walking around with a stick. No way, man. He got this really cool stick from God to do the miracles with. It was a special stick. It wasn't. He didn't walk into the palace with any old stick. God had given him a special staff. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of cool. I was reading back through. I was like, no, wait a minute, man. He got a special tool here, something kind of unique, to work with. So anyway, I just thought that was funny.
Well, you somewhat alluded to it when we were talking about the Prince of Persia and territorial angelic influence, if you will. So I want to talk a little bit about Satan, this Prince of Tyre, if you will. Ezekiel 28, I believe it is.
Ezekiel 28, yeah, let's check that out.
And so there's a mention of two different people, it seems. It seems that there's a mention of a Prince of Tyre, and then there's a mention of a King of Tyre. Could you elaborate? Are there two different people here? Is this the prince that just becomes the king? Is the prince the son of the king? Are these both human? Who are these people?
Yes. So I feel like I need to read through some of this chapter, but just to the only reason I say that is just to bring context. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll spare everybody all that and just give you the overview. But yeah, so basically we have Ezekiel, and Ezekiel is given a message to give to the Prince of Tyre. And basically, this Prince of Tyre had really gotten a little bit, it's not that he was too powerful, although he probably was, But he began to get really full of himself. He was
Right.
so successful, and he had gotten away with so much, and he was very wealthy. He was very powerful, to the degree that he started to believe in his own heart and mind that he was becoming a god himself. Like, everyone should worship me, that because of the level of power he had.
Right.
And then you think, man, what was so special about this guy? And what it is we find out later there is a king of Tyre, and the prince and the king are two different people, and they're not of there. Then we're not even talking about like the same. We're not talking about a family of royalty here. What we're talking about, or what you see when you read this. And by the way, one of the things that God tells this prince of Tyre for becoming so full of himself, is he's going to get obliterated by his enemies. He's going to send in people to wipe him out, and he does. And there's actually a historical record. I wish I could remember the name of. There's a couple of guys who, whenever I was looking at this passage a long time ago, that actually had some historical record of what they believe this battle was, where this guy gets wiped out. But anyway, that's kind of a side note. So then we figure out, as we read a little bit later, why or how this guy got there, and the way that he did is we have the king of Tyre, who's true. We have the true power behind the man. So the prince is the face. The prince is the one that everyone sees. The prince is he's like the president. He's been given this power and all this authority, and it's been given to him by what we later on realize is Satan. And what's funny is God takes a moment, and I love when this happens. You're reading the scripture, and God gives us a history lesson that he kind of sticks into the middle of it all. You're reading along, and then it says, moreover, the word of the Lord, let's see, son of man, take up thy lamentation against the king of Tyre. And and then we get the strange description of this being or person or entity that God calls full of wisdom, perfect in beauty.
Right.
Whoever this is, God tells us that he was in Eden.
Yep.
And Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. By the way, whenever you look at this, whenever it talks about precious stones, it doesn't necessarily mean they were covered in precious stones, but a lot of that is an allusion to colored light around them.
Okay.
So sometimes, but that's a way that the Bible will often
sort of
describe
like
it.
I don't want to get new agey or anything, but like an aura.
Yeah, like an aura, kind of like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's mostly because you don't. It's not like he was walking around in sequins. That's
like a rhinestone.
Walking around with rhinestones on his outfit. No, this is more of a description of his beauty. So he basically has all this color about him, colored light.
Yeah.
So it says, thou anointed cherub that covereth. So anointed cherub that covereth, basically what that means is he was put in charge. So he was covered. So he was a manager. God's saying here, the anointed cherub that covereth, anointed cherub that's over things that I have placed you over. So that's the idea that's being given here. And it says, thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Whoa. So the stones of fire, we know from Revelation, stones of fire is that alludes us to the throne room of God himself.
Right.
So that is, think about that. You think about how many times the Bible mentions the throne room. It's not much, and it mostly here and then in Revelation. There's maybe a couple of other places, but yeah. And this being is cast out of the mountain of God, and basically we have this declaration: I will destroy thee, O covering cherub. So I'll destroy thee, O cherub. So we have this angel that's in charge. Thy heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. Cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries. And something that's pretty wild here. So we have whenever we know, and it just says, and I love like verse 19, it says, all they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee, thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be any more. So, and this alludes to Revelation when he is finished in full, because right now it says all they that know thee among the people. Well, right now there's not a whole lot of people that know him, but there's going to become a time when there are people that know it. People know him. So in other words, one big mistake that people think is that Satan is really just the idea of evil, or Satan, to think about Satan is just, he's the personification of things bad that happen, when in fact, Satan, formerly Lucifer, it truly is an individual, is a being, is someone who plots or has plotted and continues to plot war against God and against heaven. Right. And so there's going to be a time when people literally choose to worship Satan or Lucifer for who he is. It's funny because there's this idea that it's all going to be in disguised and really simple, and I think that possibly pre-tribulation and pre-rapture of the church, it is going to be a lot more subtle. But we're going to reach a time, I think, whenever. Right at the end of the millennium, whenever he's loosed for a season, it pretty much says he's going to gather the armies of the earth one last time to one last fight to try to win, and that's when he's going to get frog marched out here in front of everybody. And
you said frog march.
Frog march. That's where they just grab you by the arms and drag you out there.
I like that imagery.
But he's just going to get marched out in front of everybody. And basically sentenced and imprisoned for one final time. Right. So anyway, that's what that's about. But this brings in a lot of ideas too. So I don't want to drag things out too much, but think about this. If during this time we have at least three, we have this instance in Daniel, we have this instance here in Ezekiel. There's also one more. You have the Prince of Persia. Then there's
as far as territorial.
Territorial. I think there's one more.
So I know when I had preached my message TikTok, there was the 4 angels that were bound in the Euphrates. Yeah, and that was in Revelation 10. Yeah.
Well, either way, what that tells us is there are leaders. We're talking about world leaders here. We're talking about who literally are controlled and are given power by Satan. Yeah. So there's a lot of implications there. And I'm not going to step out here too much, and get real conspiratorial. But what it does tell us, though, in truth, is that Satan does control certain territories. Does it mean he controls them all? I mean, maybe. I don't really know. Yeah. We do know that Paul tells us that he's the prince of the power of the air. So for now, Satan is allowed, and let me be real clear, he is allowed dominion here. He is allowed to have it, and that means sometimes Satan gets, Satan, believe it or not, he's got free will just like we do, just like men does, and he does not always use his free will for good, which is, just like kind of like mankind don't. We've been given this great gift that we abuse every single day, but. It's pretty wild to think that, he has control over certain areas. Yeah. And, like I say, maybe all of them, but I mean, think about some of the power. I mean, our world is changing so fast at this point in time. It really makes you wonder. And the other thing too, now this is where you can get real deep in the weeds, but Satan has locality. So what does that mean?
He's at least one place.
He's at least at one place right now as we sit here. He is somewhere here on the earth. Yeah. So that's crazy to think about too, guys. I mean, if you think about that, but it really clarifies how serious this war is and how important this book is that tells us kind of the story we're living right now. It's all right here, every bit of it. And It tells us how it began. It already tells us how it's going to end. Yep. And every bit of it is all surrounded by and has Jesus Christ intertwined in it. So,
Amen. Amen.
But that's cool too. And that's going back to Moses. I'm not going to beat Moses to death here, but the burning bush. How Jesus tells the Pharisees in his whenever he's talking to them that he is I am.
Yeah. Yep.
And when Moses asked when he was talking to the God in the burning bush, he says, who shall I tell your people that I'm representing? And he said, I am. Mm-hmm. And so Jesus is telling the Pharisees. So that's another interesting point too. Jesus was telling the Pharisees, I'm the one who talked to Moses in the burning bush. Imagine how angry that probably made them. And if you read that's one of the times they tried to stone him. But my point is, Jesus has been involved in the physical conducting of the way this Bible unfolds from day one, from the creation. I could go on forever, but one of the things that fascinated me. Now, I'm going to give you a bonus here. So, of course, let me go back to Genesis. I'm going back to Genesis chapter 1.
I don't know if you heard that. Right now, we're supposed to be under a tornado watch, not a tornado warning. So our sirens were going off here. I've heard them. So I was just checking our weather, and right now it seems like we're good.
Oh, yep. There's my alert. Tornado warning near your location. Well, we're in a concrete structure, so hopefully we're in the bunker.
Tornado watch in Autauga, Alabama, Autauga County until 5 p.m. this afternoon.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. Should I wrap it up, or can I drop some more knowledge on you?
What do you guys think? No, I think they said keep going.
Okay.
We're good. We're protected here. Granted,
we may have to duck out of these windows. There are some windows in this room, so we'll have to see how this goes. I'm gonna try to make this quick, but something talking about how personal things are.
Right.
Going back to Genesis chapter 2, something that really kind of stirred my heart a little bit is we have when you go to Genesis chapter 2 verse 8, and this is you were talking about this earlier about how sometimes people misunderstand the chronology of Genesis and how, you have creation in chapter 1, but then in chapter 2 and some of the sequential chapters are coming up, God kind of backs it up and then gives you some specifics of what happened in chapter 1.
Yeah.
And when you go to verse 8 and it says, and the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Think about this. God planted a garden. So God here being Jesus Christ. Jesus, this has all been about him. When a lot of time, not in every instance, but when you see instances to the angel of the Lord, a lot of times it is Jesus Christ. And there's ways, I won't get too deep into that, but there's ways to tell. And I love this statement, and it says, every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam. So this is Jesus. This is God. He brought them unto Adam to see what he would call, and whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. So it says Jesus brought these things to Adam just to see what he would call them. He was curious. He loved Adam, and so he was. It's just the wonder and the joy that Christ took in spending time with Adam. He wanted to see what he would name him. Yeah. So it's like, here, Adam has free will. Remember, guys, Adam has free will here. Adam can make these decisions. Adam is intelligent. He can think.
Right.
And God brought him these things just to see what he would call them. And it's like, when you think about that, think about somebody that loves you that's just so curious, like, man, just God loved us so much, and just the care that he took. He planted the garden. He loved spending time with Adam, and he's bringing these things to just to see what he's going to call them. I love the way that's phrased in here.
Yeah,
just the care that he took.
Definitely shows how God is personal, and Jesus Christ before the incarnation, very personal as well. No, I love that.
Yeah, but I like that.
You are a softie.
I'm a softie.
That pastel shirt does bring out the softer side of you. We'll have to talk to Michelle about that.
It does. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get us too far off track.
Oh, you're good.
I know we got things going on.
So I think the last question we had, Real, was talking about the book of Revelation. And in Revelation chapter number 9. Revelation 9 talks about scorpions, or things like scorpions that have the power to sting people and people would wish they were dead. I'm going to read the verses real quick in Revelation 9, 7 through 10. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. And on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold, and their faces were as faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was as the sound of running chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. And their power was to hurt men 5 months. What is this? Are these locusts? Are these scorpions? Are these... What's going on here in this passage?
So it's I have heard so many different things. The most common one, so back when I was probably in my mid to late 20s, I read this old book called Revelation Visualized.
Okay.
And because I was just trying to, back even then I was sort of trying to get my head wrapped around Revelation. And
right.
To me, I cannot remember who the author of that book was. That's actually the correct title, Revelation Visualized.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, it was. Later on, I came to realize a lot of his premises were not correct. But he believed, and I've heard this so many times. Oh, this is helicopters, and these are imagine what a soldier with a gas mask looks like, and all these things.
Yeah.
But the problem is I could never accept that. Like it still doesn't fit. Yeah. So then I started doing other reading and heard some other opinions on there, and then I started looking at it myself. And this is the thing. Let's look at what it says about these things.
Yeah.
Verse 2 says they come from the pit. So that's our first clue. These things come from the pit.
Yep.
Let me tell you something, guys. Helicopters don't come from the pit. I mean, maybe they do, but it's not any helicopters I've ever seen.
Yeah.
2, they have the power of scorpions. So what do scorpions do? They inflict pain. They cause harm, So, and how do they do that? Stingers, physical stingers. This is not a metaphor. This is talking about actual pain.
Yeah, I'd imagine helicopters, even if they have those like 30 millimeter, but the large cannons and guns on them, that wouldn't be a sting like a stinger. That would more destroy and kill, and maim, rather than just cause pain.
That's right, exactly.
But what else?
Well, the other thing is too is they can follow instructions, like physically follow, because it says, and to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months. So they can follow instructions. So helicopters don't follow instructions. I mean, maybe soldiers do, but there's a lot. There's a lot that has to be bent. In order to make that fit. So anyway, it also says, they cannot hurt the environment. So think about that. What does that mean? So they can't even hurt a blade of grass. So the whole time they're here doing what they're doing, they can't hurt the environment. In which
I would argue that the helicopter would hurt the ground and the landscape topography, causing holes, divots, fire.
Well, think about it. Let's just say these are soldiers in some kind of a suit. Well, they're tearing up the ground. If they're firing weapons, if they're doing, they're destroying things.
Right. Yeah.
So these things are they are managing to inflict pain without destroying or altering the environment.
Right.
Per instructions.
Right.
As we're saying. Also, and this is the crazy part. People affected cannot die. From their affliction. And I'm going to throw out there, they may not be able to die at all. I mean, imagine being in pain and you're like, I'm just going to come up on this building and jump off. You hit the ground and then you get up and you're like, what? I mean, you get up, but that's kind of nuts, but think about it. Think about not being able to die. That in some ways, that's a bizarre punishment. Like it's one thing to die, but what about being in pain and not being able to die?
Right. Just having to suffer the entire time.
Yes, suffer. Oh man. But anyway, so going back to the scorpion, so then we have this physical description of, they were shaped like horses in the battle, heads are as crowns like gold, faces were as of men. I'm going to tell you what, these things will scare the Jeepers Creepers out of you when you see them. So basically adding, totaling all this up, these are demons. These are, this is going to be some kind of demonic being. The other thing that gives us a little bit of a clue to that is they have a king, and his name is Abaddon. And so, king, maybe that's an allusion to a commander or a leader.
Right.
But they have leadership, and this king also comes from the pit. So, or we can make that
right.
Who's also from the pit. But yeah, that's I don't know. That right there, it all points to a demonic presence or a demon. And it is my belief that the further in time we get, the closer to the rapture of the church we get, the more we're going to see more and more strange supernatural things. I think that it might even be to the point that we become numb to it a little bit. Maybe, I don't know. But I do know that without getting too crazy, we have these UFO sightings from the DOD and other things like that.
No.
I don't know what any of that means. What I do know is it would be a really good excuse for people disappearing if there's enough narrative out there that says, hey, we have space aliens or something that are making visits to the earth. And I know that, it'll, whether that's it, I don't know, but I do know that they are, I've done some reading, and there's some fairly credible sources that really believe that all that's true. So I don't know, we'll see, but yeah, these are definitely demons in my opinion, from what I see.
Yeah, it's fascinating, especially in the fact that they come out of the bottomless pit, they come out of the abyss. Then the fact that it caused them, there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. And then when you think of locusts during that time, you think of locusts that destroy the harvest for the Jewish people. They were agrarian society. And so it tries to paint this illustration that it's an insect, but then when you get down to the descriptions, like you said, they're anything but a natural thing. These are some sort of demonic entity that is similar to a locust. I would even go so far as say they have the ability to fly, winged creatures. Yeah. And because we know cherubim and seraphim fly, they have wings as well. And then, like you said, people will seek death. And in verse 6, it says, death shall flee from them. And so the biggest thing about that particular passage there is you don't want to be here during that time. Wow. And the only way to make sure that you are not there during that time is to make sure you put your faith in Jesus Christ and trust him for the covering of your sins. And the death, burial, resurrection is the only way to make sure that you will escape that particular judgment in Revelation 9. And so I think that was the last question I had for you today. And so I just want to thank you for being here.
Appreciate you having me on.
Is there anything,
really enjoyed it.
Anything you want to just button up, close up, say, before we say goodbye?
Just one thing. If you don't find yourself being hungry for God's word, pray about that, but make it a matter of prayer, especially if it's something that the Lord's really been bugging you about. If you're not spending regular time in the Bible, daily devotional books and all that, that's all well and good, and that's fine. But I mean, taking the time to say, hey, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to read the book of Genesis. I'm going to read this and sit down and actually try to make time. Get a good study guide. There's lots of them out there. Obviously do your due diligence and be careful about who your authors are. But pray about reading God's word, and I promise you that fire, he will light a fire in you to where you'll want to spend hours. Sometimes I find myself getting frustrated because I have to get the guys at the at work started. When I'm in there reading and I get in this really juicy bit of scripture here, I'm trying to glean things, and then I get interrupted, and then so I have to put a pin in that, and then wait till the next day. And I never thought that would be the case, but it is.
That's awesome.
It is. So anyway, but and just appreciate you. I'm honored to be on the podcast, and awesome. Love C4C and what's going on with them. So.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here, and like, comment, share, subscribe, blah 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 blah. You know what to do. And until next time, God bless.